Are the Falcons finally seeing the big picture? And is there actually some hope for this team and what they're building here in Atlanta? We'll be talking about that and more with our guest today, Charles McDonald of Yahoo Sports, here on today's Locked On Falcons.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman. Been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at FalcFans.com. You know me as Mr. Drew. You know me as Sirius Black. And you know me as the very humble host here on this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Falcons is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline, as you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, guys, we thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. Of course, it's free and available Monday through Friday on a variety of podcast platforms, including on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Falcons on YouTube. And also check us out on the Locked On Sports Atlanta app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can find all the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Falcons, Locked On Hawks, Locked On Braves, Locked On Bulldogs, and of course A to Z with Mark Zeno, Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, and ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Tanitra Batiste, all in the Locked On Sports Atlanta app, now available on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. So, guys, without further ado, let's jump into the conversation I had today with Charles McDonald of Yahoo Sports, formerly of Underdog Scouting or Underdog Fantasy, formerly of the New York Daily News, formerly of the Falcoholic. I'm trying to think of all the other places Charles has been since he's been on this podcast over the last 6 or so years and made frequent appearances. But without further ado, we're going to jump into that conversation talking about, is he all in on Desmond Ridder? Is this team seeing the big picture now that Ridder's the starter? What's sort of their plans at the quarterback position beyond this season? All that and more. And we'll talk a little bit about, what's going on with Marcus Mariota as well on today's episode. All right, guys, you are here for another illustrious guest on this Locked On Falcons podcast, your first listen each and every day. And of course, I'm talking about Charles McDonald, now with Yahoo Sports. Charles is always with a different website or place every time he comes on this podcast. So welcome back to the show, Charles, my friend.
Thanks. I'm not going anywhere for a while now. They're treating me too good here. So Yahoo's stuck with me for what seems like a good amount of time. But yeah, I've been jumping around a lot, but to be fair to myself, it was to try to get somewhere like here. So got there, and now they'll have to kill me before I leave.
Okay. All right. It's fine. No judgment here. Hey, find
no,
your happy place.
I did get some people. They were like, "Oh, this guy can't keep a job," and I'm like, "You gonna keep turning down pay raises?" I don't think so, my guy. So, it's a new era.
I hear you, man. I hear you. So it is a new era of Charles McDonald. It's also a new era of the Atlanta Falcons because gotta ask you, Charles, are you all in on the Ridder Sons?
No. I mean, well, in what sense? In what sense what does all in mean? Like, I'm all in for the standpoint that, like, they got their head out of their ass a little bit and they have started to look at the bigger picture. Because I think the teams can get into this spot where the standing says you're 5-8, but the standings also says you're a game out of first place in the NFC South, which is kind of I think it can be a tough thing to balance, but to their credit, they kind of took a step back and look at the bigger picture here. And the truth of the matter is, they can make the playoffs. This team ain't winning the Super Bowl, and and let's say you make the playoffs. As things stand right now, you're welcoming Dallas to Atlanta, and come on, like that game wouldn't even be close, especially if you're going to tell me that I got to throw a rookie quarterback out there against Dallas. But I think it's good that they're at least trying to figure out if Ridder's the guy. And personally, I I I don't really care if Ritter sucks or not right now, because it just shows that they're at least thinking about quarterback solutions that go beyond Marcus Mariota, which I think fans had a right to be nervous about based on how Arthur Smith was answering some of these questions throughout the season. But they got to the bye week. Um, it's Raider time. He's got a huge first game, as huge a game as low stakes as this Falcons Saints game is about to be. Uh, it's a pretty big first start for Ritter to go to New Orleans and take on. I mean, I think a defense at least has been pretty solid this year. So, yeah, I'm just excited that they didn't get kind of too stuck in the 2022 season and realizing that the scope of this thing needs to go um, a lot wider than just this season.
Okay, so okay, you're in as far as this season goes, but clearly you're sort of thinking ahead long term that maybe Ritter's not the answer when it comes to the quarterback situation.
Well, I guess I'll just look at it from the standpoint of this. I think that whatever you thought of Ritter pre-draft, personally, I probably would have taken them around where they took like Ebiketie, just from what I thought of him coming through the draft. But I think that it's healthy to not put all your chips in the table with a third round quarterback. I mean, he got passed over by every team at least once, including the Falcons 3 times. So I I'm optimistic about Ritter. I think he has all the tools you need to be an NFL starter, but at the same time, like we've been watching football long enough to know that, hey, at the end of the day, it's still a third round rookie, third round quarterback. Let's kind of keep these expectations in check as we start to move through his career. But I would say I still expect him to have 1 or 2 quality performances before the season's over.
Right, as long as they're against the Saints and the Bucks, right?
I don't really care about the Bucks, but the Saints, yeah.
I just don't want Tom Brady to. I know there's talk that he's going to stay, but I don't want him to retire having not lost a game to the Falcons.
Yeah, but we're Falcons fans, so whatever.
Yeah. You don't always get what you want, right? Before we move on and talk a little bit more about your thoughts on the season so far, are you, in terms of quarterback situation, are you looking ahead thinking the Falcons go for a veteran, or are you looking more towards the draft if Ridder doesn't work out?
If Ridder doesn't work out, I think idealistically you want to look towards the draft, right? But I just don't really know how teams are going to view this upcoming draft class. It's kind of an interesting year. Even as far as like I really like Bryce Young. Like I know that there's a lot of knocks against him, the size, maybe some arm strength concerns, but I think there's just a lot he does at a really high level that I will be willing to be able to take a chance on him pretty early in the draft. But to me, it's not like this quarterback class is last year's quarterback class where you have guys like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields that are coming out the pipeline. There's no real like bona fide gotta have a guy, to me at least, as far as NFL as far as like NFL guys looking at it. And I think that kind of puts you in a tough spot, because if you go through and let's say, I don't know, this is purely hypothetical, but let's say they end up making a trade for like Derek Carr, that really accelerates your timeline for what you need to be like now. And I don't think that this team is ready, especially when you look on the defensive side of the ball, to kind of be going all in on a quarterback like that. To me, that's a move that like the Jets should be making, or someone like that, where you feel like, all right, if we can just get a quarterback in here, we have a chance to make the playoff just about every season. I don't think Atlanta's quite there just yet. So, I would be willing to look at a rookie quarterback. I think Bryce Young's the top guy to me, but he's got his own questions. And then you're looking at guys like, and this is also with the caveat that the Falcons lose enough games to get into, the let's say the top 7 up in the draft. You're looking at CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. I mean, it's not really all that enticing to me. So we'll see what they do, but I do think a younger quarterback is probably the way. And obviously the easiest path here for the Falcons is Desmond Ridder shows some serious promise in the last 4 games of the season, because that changes the entire offseason for you if he does.
Okay. All right. Yeah. If you're going a quarterback, you got to get ahead of Carolina, I think, at this point
Yeah.
in time. So.
Yeah, which is possible. I mean, you're starting a rookie quarterback with one of the worst defenses in the league. They absolutely could go 0-4, especially if Lamar's back for their Ravens game.
True. That's true. Yeah. Since Kyler's out. Yeah. Yes. It's going to be. Yeah. We'll see. But that being said, we will get Charles's thoughts on the Falcons 2022 season now that it's basically 3 quarters up, and get his general thoughts on what things that he likes or doesn't like about 2022 so far. And we'll get into that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, there's more to come here on Locked On Falcons. But before we get there, I do want to plug the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family. As I said at the top, you can check out a whole host of shows, all available on the same podcast feed. That's A to Z with Mark Zeno, Hitting Hard with John Chucker, and ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Tanitra Batiste. And of course, Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube is the home of the Locked On Falcons postcast, where Jarvis Davis and myself come at you live minutes after the final whistle of each Falcons game. We'll be coming at you live this Sunday after that Saints game, and then later this season on a Saturday. I know there's a Saturday game coming up. I think this is against the Ravens, as an early Christmas present. And we'll be doing that again. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube so you can check out when we go live. And guys, I want to tell you about our proud sponsor, LinkedIn Jobs. They're here to make it easier for you to find the right people that you want to talk to faster and for free. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach the world's largest professional network of over 800 million people. And they provide you simple tools like screening questions that will make it easier for you to find the right candidates with the right experience and skills that can quickly prioritize who you want to interview, who you want to hire, and finish your year strong by finding the right team member, just like the Atlanta Falcons are trying to do. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs wants to help you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And guys, today's episode is also brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a new slate of football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. Check out a sneak peek of the Think Like a Champion podcast available on Locked On Presents right now. Think Like a Champion is a brand new podcast from Russell Wilson and Audible. Russ is a champion on the field, but off it, we rarely get to know about the grind on the path to greatness. Russell Wilson, along with his co-hosts, are digging into how high-performance athletes, artists, and leaders push the boundaries of their potential. Each episode features interviews with Olympic medalists, NFL stars like Von Miller, and business leaders. Hosts swap stories and share proven mental techniques that have gotten the world's most elite performers across the finish line and beyond. Head over to Locked On Presents for a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion podcast right now, or catch the full series for free on Audible or wherever you get your podcasts. Audible, get in the game. Guys, here with Charles McDonald of Yahoo Sports. And Charles, you kind of talked a little bit earlier about the team finally seeing the big picture in terms of their future with the switch from Marcus Mariota to Desmond Ridder. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on this season as a whole? Do you have a generally favorable opinion of the season, or are you lukewarm, or are you down on the team at this point? Where are you at?
I would say more favorable than not. I think this team is better than last year. And to me, looking at the Falcons like this year, my whole thing was I don't really care if the record is worse, because I think that 7-10 record they had last year was pretty flimsy. Like when you end up looking at the actual results of what happened and what happened anytime they play like a half decent playoff team. But this year, I think you saw at least there's a stronger base for being competitive moving forward. And I think that one of the most interesting things that we've seen this year, and it hasn't been true the entire season, but I think a lot of times the offensive line is kind of overperformed like the sum of its parts, because when I look at just the 5 names that have been up there for the majority of the season. I still would suggest that they go out there and upgrade guys like Elijah Wilkinson at left guard, and maybe even try to find a center too. But to me, it's promising at least that this offensive coaching staff has either figured out ways to work around that, or actually get these guys to kind of improve when it comes to their game performance. I think that matters a lot, especially if we're going to be talking about putting a rookie quarterback into this situation next year, or even if it's Desmond Ridder next year, who will have started 4 games by the time his second season starts. Like, that's not a whole lot of experience. And I am still on the play caller, Arthur Smith. I'm still really bullish on it. I think that I still think once they figure out how to get some more talent into this offense, and kind of figure out a stable quarterback, they're really going to explode and be one of the better offenses in the league. I mean, the fact that for good chunks of the year, they were able to kind of sustain. They were not for good chunks of the year, but at least like the start of the year, they were able to perform like one of the better offenses in the league. And when you look at their roster, it's like, a lot of these guys, they wouldn't be getting a whole lot of playing time in other situations. So I think that that's something to feel really good about. I see some people starting to doubt, like, if Kyle Pitts is really that guy. I would say just hold on. Like, we also we do as a rookie. I think there's some weird going on this year. I don't think it should change like what your forecast is for Pitts. I still think he's amazing. So you at least are walking to an offense with Drake London, Kyle Pitts. We'll see how Cordell Patterson continues to age, but he's still a nice piece to have around for another year or two. So I'm still bullish about like the base that they've built this year. Some of the losses are kind of frustrating. Like when you look back at the week 1 loss to the Saints, that loss to the Commanders, you're just like, it kind of feels like some same old bullshit. But I do think that there's actually kind of like a clear path to this team being one of the better offenses in the league again. We'll see what happens with quarterback, but I do think Arthur Smith has turned out to be a pretty good play caller at least.
Okay, sorry, Bijan Robinson. Sorry, I didn't.
Is that a real thing? Like, like he would be sick. Like it would be great. But is that really what we need to do?
I don't know, man. I was watching the Iowa State pass rusher last week, and they were playing Texas in the cut up I was watching, and I was just like watching Bijan. I was just like, this dude is ridiculous, Yeah. And like, I think the running game is doing great, right? And so they don't need him. But like I watched the games, and I'm like Tyler Allgeier's exceeding my expectations. But like there's so many times when I watch in the film where it's like the fact that he runs a 4.6 is like holding back the offense, And it's like, it's like you got your stopwatch out before he hits the hole and stuff. And it's like if they could get like a Devontae, like a change of pace guy that can make the cuts and have all the vision and stuff, that's what they need. But like Arthur Smith is so obsessed with like these 230-pound bruisers, right? And so like I watch Bijan and I'm like he's the 230-pound bruiser, but he also has the speed and the quickness and all that stuff. And so like he's like the best case scenario for that potential running back upgrade. But it's probably not.
Yeah. On some of these runs, and I think that Allgeier and Huntley they've objectively done a good job this year. But man, I look at some of these runs and some of these holes, I'm like, damn, I miss Tevin Coleman. I was like, where the hell is Tico Rod? Because I swear, Allgeier, he'll have runs where, it looks so great. You get through the line of scrimmage, he's getting to the second level, gets past a linebacker, and it's just quicksand. I'm like, come on, bro. And I think he still has a valuable place on the roster because I like at worst he can be a really, really good short yard back for them moving forward. But I agree with you definitely. Like they need to get someone with some more juice, and Bijan will be one of those picks for like let's say, I think they're picking 10th right now. Mm-hmm. If they call that pick in at 10, I'm pretty pissed for the next like 2 hours, and then I'm looking up highlights, right? And you're like, who? We got Kyle Pitts, Patrick Quillin, Bijan Robinson. Hopefully Desmond Ridder turns out to be something. But this is what I'm saying. Like it just feels I don't know. To me, the Falcons, where the Falcons are, it feels more optimistic than where like other teams are with their rebuilds. Because I mean, once you get the access to the cap space, which they haven't had for a while now, coming up this year, I'm kind of iffy on how I want them to handle that, because I would love to see some splurging. Like I would love to see some big name players come back to Atlanta. But at the same time, like there's a real opportunity to play this smart and kind of set yourself up to be well run for the next, 3, 4, 5 years if they can kind of nail this offseason down. So look, I think that as bad as parts of this season have gone, got to remember that the results last year may say 7-10. The results this year may end up being around 7-10, 6-11, but the record is not the only sign of like improvement that you can track throughout the Falcons or any football team. And to me, this team's in a lot better spot than they were last year. I think the fact that they finally had the foresight, or maybe this was a plan the entire time, to wait till the bye week to let Ridder start some games. I think we're starting to see some good signs. And now here comes like the actual interesting part. What does Terry Fontenot and what does Arthur Smith do with a whole bunch of money in free agency? And I think that's how we'll see what the next level of this looks like. But I'm fairly optimistic that they can get back to playing like real competitive football. I'll never, ever, ever say that this team can win a Super Bowl, but I do think that they can get back to being a playoff team rather quickly.
Take what we can get, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of what we can get, because it's a bad segue. We'll be wrapping up today's episode, talking about Marcus Mariota and whether or not he quit on the team. We'll get Charles's thoughts on that one as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Still plenty to come on today's Locked On Falcons podcast, and we thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. And of course, why not check out Locked On Sports Today as your second listen? Of course, Locked On Sports Today goes beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes, giving you the insight and expert analysis that only Locked On can provide. So subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Guys, I want to tell you about the number one source for sports betting info, and that is our proud sponsor, betonline.net. You can get sports betting info, stats, news, analysis, and since I know you love sports podcasts, you can also find those at betonline.net as well. And of course, if you're just looking for the lines for this upcoming weekend's action, of course, the Falcons are 4-point underdogs on the road to the New Orleans Saints. And of course, we believe that Desmond Ridder will be able to overcome that, whether you're part of the Ridder faithful or not. Of course, head on over to betonline.net and you can find not only the latest odds and trends for the NFL, but for every other professional and amateur league out there, from the NFL to college bowl season, to the NBA, to the World Cup, to esports. All of it is there and more at betonline.net. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So guys, here with Charles McDonald of Yahoo Sports. And, yesterday, at least in my Twitter feed, it was all about, taking a running back in the first round is a terrible pick, right? Today, in my Twitter feed, it was all about, did Marcus Mariota quit on the team? I'm just curious, what's your read on that situation?
Quit is an interesting word. I don't know. It doesn't feel right to go all the way to quit, even though that's kind of what he did. Like, that's kind of what he did. Because you do have the convenient, and it's not even an excuse. Like, you have the side piece of this where he did just have a baby. And look, if I'm gonna ask the audience this question. All right, so you get demoted at work, right? But you just had a newborn, but you still got enough money to not have to work for a long time. Like a long time. Would you go home? I don't know. I think it's kind of a fair question to ask here. But the problem is NFL society is not the same as normal people society. Where if I pose that question to you, Aaron, you just had a kid, you have millions of dollars in the bank, you just got demoted at work. Are you going home?
I'm going home.
Yeah, of course. I would go home too. But it's different when you're in a workplace where it's like it's a gladiator sport and the emotions aren't the same for that. And I think that we've seen a lot of guys have children. Jake Matthews, baby, flew to Carolina the same day. It's very unusual that a NFL player would take a month off work for having a child. So I see where people are coming from on the quit stuff. And honestly, if I was Marcus, I would have stuck around because let's say, one Desmond Ridder injury, you're right back in there. Like you're going to play over Felipe Franks or Logan Woodside. Like, I don't know. It was kind of strange, but I also understand his ego is probably hurt. If we're being realistic about it, this is probably the last chance he's going to get to be a full-time starter for his career. So I understand that he's hurt about it. To me, it's a more complex question than did he just quit? But from the brutish football version, the brutish football standpoint that people tend to look at it, yeah, he definitely quit, bro. Like he definitely did quit.
Yeah, I think it's fair. But I would say like with Jake Matthews, like if they had just benched Jake Matthews the week before, is he flying back to Atlanta to get to that game? No, probably not.
Probably not. Probably not.
And like I look, I get it. To me, it's like just Marcus is decide, what, like he can put his 2 weeks notice in now, or he could wait till after Christmas. Why wait till after Christmas if you're going to get cut this offseason?
Yeah.
Right. If again, the question of the, how big is the knee issue? I'm sure it's a real issue, right? I'm sure he could opt to either get the procedure done now or wait till later. But if you're going to be a free agent this offseason and like there's no, again, there is a path for you to get back on the field, but it would, it's probably not going to happen. Get the procedure done now so that you can get ready to, find your next job. Maybe. I don't know. So yeah. I don't have a problem with it, but I get why, in this business, as you say, in this society, everybody else has a problem with it.
Yeah. I don't think Arthur Smith did him any favors with the way that the information was relayed back to the public. So, Josh Kendall's article, Josh Kendall at The Athletic, his article said that they told Mariota and Ridder on a Thursday, and Mariota said Friday, I'm out. Which, hey, look. I think the point that matters here that kind of maybe has been forgotten about as the day has gone along. You just said it. He was getting cut regardless. Like that game. Whether or not he stays as the backup or he leaves, that last start that he just had was his last start as a Falcons quarterback. I feel 100% confident in saying that. And the truth of the matter is, like, a team that hasn't had a whole lot of money to spend over the past few years, like if they cut him in the offseason, they can save $12 million. So I can't really think of a time that I've seen this. Maybe like it's not quite what Vontae Davis did, but it's not like too far off. like just I don't need this anymore. I'm going home. What I would ask Marcus is, okay, so you're unless you're willing to go be a mentor for whoever Houston or Carolina picks next season. And I'm assuming with Marcus going home, that's not something he really has interest in doing. I would ask Marcus, like, are you going to retire? Because I can't imagine that a whole lot of teams would be in the market for a backup quarterback who wasn't willing to be the backup quarterback. I'm willing. I'm just interested to see how this affects Marcus's free agency thing because we saw, and I feel crazy even making this comparison, but when Antonio Brown walked off that field with the Jets in that Jets game, there's nothing the NFL and football players view worse than a quitter. Like, think about all the things that Antonio Brown did leading up to that moment where he ran off the field against the Jets up here in New York City. That was the thing that got him kicked out of the NFL. Not any of the other shit that happened before that. It was walking up the field at halftime against the Jets. And that stuff really matters to the players, coaches, front office people. So I'm really interested to see if Marcus Mariota gets another like real shot to be someone's backup next year, because his time in Atlanta is definitely done.
So you're saying Marcus Mariota will get blackballed in the NFL before the Browns quarterback does?
Wow. Marcus Mariota, blackballed for being a good father. You heard it here first in the Locked On Falcons podcast.
We'll leave it at that, guys. I got nothing else to say. Charles, man, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your thoughts. We'll have to do this again in the offseason. Hopefully you'll still be with Yahoo. As you promised on today's episode. You heard it here first. Whoever is running HR over at Yahoo, but let the people know what you got coming for them over at Yahoo.
The example list is going to be back at some point. We're working on some producer stuff over there, but it's going to be back at Yahoo. Really, I'm just doing what I do. It's columns, mini interviews every once in a while, 4 birds. I haven't really tweeted out too much stuff because kind of don't need to anymore, but it's good stuff. Yeah, if you're over on the Yahoo Sports side, definitely check out the work that me and my coworkers Charles Robinson and Jory Epstein are doing. Listen to You Pod to Win the Game with Charles Robinson and Frank Schwab. It's a pretty fun show, and we're on there every Wednesday. So yeah, that's what I got going on right now. It's good stuff.
All right, guys, go check it out. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us here on today's Locked On Falcons. Thanks to Charles McDonald of Yahoo Sports for joining us. Look forward to our future conversations. Tomorrow's episode will be a crossover Thursday with Locked On Saints host Ross Jackson previewing this upcoming matchup. Then Friday's episode will be joined by Jarvis Davis of the ATL Day Ones podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, your team every day. Get his thoughts on the keys to victory, guys. We thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen. Why not check out Locked On Sports today, as well as Locked On Sports Atlanta for your second listen, guys. Free and available on all the same podcast platforms that you are currently watching or listening to Locked On Falcons. Really appreciate it, guys. See you tomorrow.